Well, it's sort of come into the mainstream. There are movies, there are books, there are documentaries, and there are people, normally sane individuals, talking about it. Not to say that if you're insane if you are talking about it, but the question has come up of, what is it? Is there anything to it? Is it just superstition? Is it just a bunch of crackpots down in the jungle smoking pot and drinking all kinds of various concoctions from the natives that put you into a different world, coming up with these stories? Or is there something to it? Is there something going to change? Did the Mayans know something we don't know? Let's face it, there is a lot about that civilization that we don't know. They knew a lot of things we don't know now. We look back at the Egyptian civilization. How did they build those pyramids anyway? And the truth is, we don't know. That's the truth. And I got this book across my desk a few weeks ago, and I thought, we've got to have this lady on my program here on KSFO. And in fact, we got her right now. Her name is Alexandra Bruce. She has a new book out called 2012 Science or Superstition, The Definitive Guide to the Doomsday Phenomenon. She is the author of 6 nonfiction books about popular culture, science, and spirituality. This is the third one that she's done for a company, which I think is great. We've used a number of their authors before. It's called the Disinformation Company. This book now, but then she also did, which I haven't seen, I love the title, Beyond the Bleep, The Definitive Unauthorized Guide to What the Bleep Do We Know? And the other one, Beyond the Secret, The Definitive Unauthorized Guide to the Secret. Now, this is not a crackpot lady. This is a lady with excellent background and training. She's a graduate of Brown University. She went to the Sorbonne in Paris, and she also went to the NYU Film School. She was co-creator of MTV's revolutionary Yo! MTV Raps. She's worked in film, television, print production, DVD publishing, marketing, cable television advertising, and she has spent 7 years as a pundit promoting her 5 published books. She works on documentaries, which she's currently working on, and she is with us right now on KSFO. Alexandra Bruce, thanks for being with us. Are you there?
Great.
Thank you very much. I have to ask you, what does it feel like to be a pundit?
A pundit? Well, it is funny, because the more that you look and try to describe what is real, the slipperier the slope gets, and it's, so much of what everything that people do is all about beliefs, and we are meaning-making machines, you know. And so I just try to stay to the facts as well as we can possibly determine what they are, you know.
Yeah. What got you interested in the 2012? Was it just that this growing interest in the mainstream as opposed to the fringe element where it was pretty popular for a long time?
Well, I initially did hear about it around the mid-'90s. I attended a Terence McKenna lecture, and if there's anybody out there who's never heard of him, he was the most spellbinding speaker. He was a bard. I mean, the man was a genius live speaker. He would actually he would just sit there and talk in front of an audience for 10 hours and keep everyone in rapt attention. I mean, he was the most gifted speaker I have ever seen.
He was also a very happy user of all kinds of drugs, too, wasn't he?
This is true, and being the boomer that he was, he also told everyone that they all had to go do it, too.
That's right. I talked to him at least once, if not a couple of times, on Coast to Coast, along with some of the other people that were mentioned in the documentaries that you're working on. It's really interesting because I must admit, not ever having seen him in public, I took him with a grain of salt because I thought this is just, a boomer who is just spaced out all the time.
Right.
Is he, or was he? Because he's dead now.
No, he's much more, well, he might have been a boomer, and he might have enjoyed psychedelics, but actually it was, to him, it represented a potential glimmer into the future of human consciousness, and also, a peek perhaps into the past, because it was his belief that primitive, Neolithic man regularly or inadvertently ate mushrooms from, their sort of foraging lifestyle.
Right.
And he calls the moment when that activity stopped the break from the divine logos. He thinks that was the fall of Eden, when humankind stopped tripping. That was his interpretation. I think that's the basic premise of the book he wrote called The Archaic Revival. And the man had very persuasive gifts with language. And
he did. There's no question about it. Yeah. Now tell me about, let's get some of, if we can, facts or what we do know. Was there a Mayan calendar?
Okay, well, they were supposedly up to 24 Mayan calendars or almanacs based on the movements of the celestial bodies that they very carefully, and you could even say religiously, tracked. The moon was the most important, and they had a 260-day lunar calendar, which was the most important. It actually it represents the 9 months of a human gestational period. It had to do with the planting of corn in the highlands. And to them, 260 was a number that magically seemed to fit into so many other cycles that they observed in the other celestial bodies. They also had a 365-day solar calendar, and the Venus calendar was also very important. And as it happened, 2 calendar rounds. Well, there's a cycle where there's a complete round where the lunar and the solar calendar interlink. That one round is 52 years, and 2 rounds is exactly one Venus cycle. It just so happens.
And what does that mean? What's the import of that?
It doesn't mean something from an astrological point of view. I mean, astronomical, I should say. It's astrological. It's from our point of view from the Earth, because like the Greeks and the Egyptians and even the Babylonians, who were also very, very, very good at making these kinds of observations and recording them.
That's right.
They were still geocentric, and so they were describing what is called the celestial sphere, which is the sky above them that they believed was moving around them, and that the Earth was stationary, which we, of course, know is not true. So that's what astrology is. Astrology is describing the celestial sphere or that sky that's moving, and astronomy is, of course, describing, a more 3D view of the celestial bodies.
Exactly. Now, when they say that the Mayan calendar stopped at 2012, is that in fact that they just didn't make any more pages of their calendars after that date?
No. First of all, that's not quite correct, because the same way that the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we use today, doesn't stop. Right? It might have begun on the year that Jesus was born, but there's no end to it.
Right.
And that we can theoretically talk about 100,000 BC and 100,000 AD, and the Maya long count calendar, which is the one that they're referring to, is exactly the same way. It was the first linear calendar that the Maya had created, because all of their previous calendars were based on these cyclical movements of planetary and celestial, the sun and the moon and the Venus and the other bodies.
So where do we get this idea that the Mayan calendar stopped in 2012? Because that's what a lot of people believe.
Okay, well, this is it. For some reason, up until the 1st century BC, the Maya didn't really see a point to measuring one year against the other. They didn't really see the idea of they had units of time that were huge. The largest of one, which they gave a name, was like over 16 billion years, and it was called an oblatoon, which is 2 billion years older than or just around the accepted scientific age of our universe. And then there were other humongous units of time that were smaller, and then there was one number that they did not give a name to that was in the nonillions that they found inscribed on a stela there. But so this was a linear calendar into which they placed their older cyclical calendars. And this was a holy decision. This was one that was about a world age. They had a world age doctrine similar to the Greeks and the Romans and the Hindus, who still have it, still use it in their religion. But their cycles, I think, varied. They weren't always the same length. Same as the Hindus, by the way. The Kali Yuga, which is the cycle that we're currently in, according to the Hindus, is the shortest one. And they weren't always of the same length. But this is a 5,125-year cycle that is ending not the calendar itself.
Oh, but
the calendar keeps going.
the cycle is ending on 2012.